session of IPR, that is Patent Protection in India, the Law and Practice. Let me invite our resource person, Dr. I.G. Radish, Assistant Professor in the Indian University Center for IPR Studies in CUSAT. Sir, please join us for this session.
Thank you, ma'am. Just give me a moment. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Just allow me to share my screen. I hope my screen is visible. Hello, am I audible?
Sir, now it is visible.
Okay. Fine. Welcome back, everyone, to the second session, the afternoon session of, I would call it the leg 2 of IPR. In the first one, you may recall we discussed about. I just gave you a bird's eye view of what basically the concept of IPR is, and we discussed trademarks and copyright in little bit detail over there. And also we discussed other forms of IPR such as geographical indication, protection of plant variety and farmers' rights, the industrial design, and patents we just touched upon because patents we had an exclusive session for that. So in this session, I'm going to discuss with you people this particular topic on patent protection in India, law and practice as part of the second session. So this is how I'm structuring my presentation for today's talk. So you can see there are three font colors that I've used. So basically, just to highlight that these are the three sections that I'm going to cover over here. So in the first section, I'll just look into what patents are and I'll look at the law basically over there, and why practically you should file patents. So this is something that I borrowed from my previous presentation, and limitations on the patent rights over there. So we'll quickly. Hello, may I request all of you to kindly mute your microphones? So then limitations, and finally I'll discuss about the patentability requirements. So patents are not automatically granted. So once you file a patent application, it is examined by the patent application for the certain criteria that the Indian Patent Act, based on the Indian Patent Act. So we'll look at what those criteria are or what those patentability requirements are. So unless your invention meets all these requirements, a patent will not be granted. And then I have exercise on patentability over there. So after understanding what the patentability requirements are, we can just quickly look at 4 exercises, basically just 4 inventions that I put across, depending on the criteria that we'll be looking into on the patentability criteria. And based on that, I have this exercise. So we have to assess or maybe analyze whether these inventions would be patentable based on the criteria. Then I move on to the patent filing procedure. So this section is talking more about the practice aspects. The previous one would be talking on the law aspects. So patent filing, what basically is a procedure. So what are the strategies that you can follow? Basically, two strategies I'm going to discuss over there. One of them is unique to the patent system, which we normally call as a provisional filing mechanism, which you don't normally find in the case of journal publications. Right? So if you're going in for journal publications, your work must be complete. Only then can you submit a manuscript. But in the case of patents, even if your invention is at a nascent stage, is incomplete, or requires more time to be completed, then you can avail the option of filing a provisional application. So we'll just quickly look at two of these options. There are other options as well, but one, because of paucity of time, and second, not to complicate the matters, we'll just look at some of these patent filing. That's couple of these patent filing strategies that we can follow in India. So as I mentioned in my previous talk as well, that my focus would be on India, because these procedures and laws are privy to a particular country. So there may be changes in the law when you move from one country to another country. So we will have to evaluate a subject matter based on the country in which you're filing a patent application. So my focus would be on India. After that, I have a quick slide on the statutory fees in India along with the timelines. So this is one of the questions that you frequently ask, that how much fees would be involved. So I'm going to give you the exact fees that is charged by the patent office in two different modes. So whether you choose the offline mode for filing, or whether you choose the online mode for filing a patent application, and roughly the timelines as well. How much time it would take for a patent to be granted once it is filed. So those timelines roughly are touched. Professional fees are not included because that varies from one law firm to another, or even from one professional to another. Then I have one more slide wherein I'm showing the scheme. So basically, these are the schemes or a flow chart of patent filing in foreign countries. So interestingly, when we talk about patent filing in foreign countries, you look when I discuss this in my forthcoming slides, that patent rights are basically territorial. So whenever you file a patent application, or if you have a patent granted in your name, so it is country specific. So if it has been, did I lose my screen sharing? Is it visible to? Okay, probably, ma'am. I think it has been disabled at your end. So give me a moment to quickly share my screen. I think you will have to enable, the host would have to enable my screen sharing.
So it is enabled from this side. You may share it.
Okay. Now, quickly coming back, I hope my slide is visible now.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Am I audible? Am I audible now? Or do you want me to raise my voice, or maybe move a bit forward towards my laptop?
It could be better you can just move a bit forward, because it is audible, but
Feeble, yeah. I think primarily because I'm also using my headset. That could be one of the reasons. Yeah, I'll still try to be a bit louder as well. So patent filing in foreign countries. So as I said, since patent rights are territorial in nature, you will have to file your patent applications for the same invention in countries where you want to protect your invention. So one is, if you file a patent in India, you don't get an international protection. And secondly, you don't have something called as an international patent. So there are a lot of people who say that I've got an international patent. There is no such thing as an international patent. So you have something called as international patent filing mechanism, wherein you can file an international patent, but every country has its own mechanisms, or under its own law will take a call, or will decide whether they want to grant a patent for your invention in their country or not. So these are basically restricted to the respective countries. So that is necessary. So when you are talking about patent filing in India, we are only specifically focusing on India. But if you also want to protect the same invention in other countries, then you will have to file that application in those foreign countries. So basically, there also you have two mechanisms, the two strategies. One is you can file a single application initially after 12 months, which is normally called as a PCT or international application, or you can also choose something called as a Paris Convention route over there. We'll discuss that when I come to that particular slide. And finally, I move on to this third section wherein I discuss about the various precautions that you must take if you wish to file a patent application, or if you want to protect the patentability of your invention. So you want to ensure that your invention is patented. So there are certain activities. May I request all of you to kindly mute your microphones? So certain activities that you must do if you want to protect your invention, and certain activities which you must avoid doing or refrain from doing if you want to protect your invention. So if you wish to file a patent application. And finally, I just have a slide on measures for protecting interest of inventors. So this comes before patent filing and after patent filing. For instance, if you want to disclose your invention to somebody, under what condition should it be done? So it should be done under a non-disclosure agreement. Likewise, if you want to enter into a joint collaboration, so you must have provisions for sharing of IPR on how you would like to share any IPR that is generated because of the joint collaboration that you have. And once you have filed a patent application, if the product is commercialized based on this patented invention, then if there is any benefits that are being accrued, how would you like to actually share the benefits? So all those things must always be there as documents, as legal documents or as agreements, so that they can protect your particular interest as an inventor over there. So basically, that's in a nutshell that I'll be covering in this particular presentation for today. I hope I'm audible to all of you. So as I did mention in my previous talk or previous session as well, that I may prompt in between just to ensure that I'm there with all of you virtually. So quickly moving on to the introduction on patents. So if you recall, in my earlier session, I just gave you a brief introduction of patents. So as you may be aware that yes, since we have been talking about IPR and patents is definitely one of the most important tools of IPR, intellectual property rights. Isn't it? And what is the subject matter that is protected under patent? So if you recall, we discussed in my previous session that patents protect inventions and copyright protects original work of authorship. Likewise, trademark protects these graphically representable signs, names, and logos. So likewise, depending on the subject matter that you're creating, you can seek protection of your IP under that particular law. So in this case, if you have developed an invention, then if it is patentable, you can file a patent application, and if it is found in order, the patent office will grant a patent. Basically, we have two kinds of patents when we talk in the context of India. So these are product patents or process patents. So product patents would involve, could be a chemical molecule, could be a chemical substance, could be a machine, could be a device, could be a composition of matter such as a soap or a lubricant. So it's all those are normally characterized or categorized under the product patents. Likewise, in the case of computer related inventions, you find there may be system claims. So if you're claiming something in that particular area as a system claim, that would also fall under the category of product patents. Now, process patents would cover these processes or methods for making these products that we talked about. Likewise, technologies that you may be developing would fall in the category of process. So anything that involves a particular step of performing or achieving a particular objective could be making a product over there. Such processes or methods of operations can be covered under the process patent. Now, this is something that I discussed. So when we say that patent rights are territorial, what it means is if I have a patent in India, I can enforce my rights only in India. So I cannot, give me a moment. Sorry, yeah. So when I say that patent rights are territorial, what I mean is that you can enforce your rights only in the country in which a patent has been granted. So if I have filed and secured a patent in India, I can enforce my rights only in India. Likewise, if I want to enforce my rights in other countries, then I'll have to file a patent and also secure one. So just by filing a patent, you don't have any rights over it. You only have rights when a patent is granted. So it's just like if you have identified a physical property such as maybe a land or a house, and you may enter into an agreement based on payment of an advance over there. But just because you make a payment for an advance and enter into an agreement, you don't become owner over there, right? So once you meet the obligations of the agreement, you pay the full amount and get the property registered in your name, only then can you qualify yourself legally as an owner. So likewise, in the case of patents also, just because you file a patent, it does not give you any rights. Your rights accrue only when a patent has been granted by the respective patent offices of the country. And then you can enforce your rights only in those countries. So if you have patent for a product in India, and if someone is using the same patented product, he's manufacturing it in the US and selling it over there, and if no corresponding patent is existing in USA, you cannot enforce your rights over there, right? So you don't have a rights for enforcing your invention or patent rights in the US because you have not filed a patent over there for the same invention. So that's what it means by territoriality. Uh, yes, so we also discussed in my previous session that these rights are given for a temporary period, right? So you have a certain duration of protection. That means in the case of patent, it is 20 years from the date of filing. Uh, and also once a patent is granted, you have to renew it every year. So in the case of, if you don't do that, once a patent is granted, then it is considered to be lapsed over there. So then you cannot enforce your right. So it's for the initial 2 years, there are no fees, but after that, every year you have to pay the fees, provided your patent is granted. If your patent is not granted, the renewal does not come into picture. But once it is granted, you have to start paying the renewal fees, and this keeps on increasing. So from third year onwards, you find that you have two categories, and then for each category there may be a fees. And third, fourth, fifth years, and sixth year, you will find that it's the same amount. But from the 7th to 10th year, the amount increases each year. Likewise, 11th to 14th year also it increases than the previous lap. So basically, the fees keeps on increasing. The objective over there is to ensure that the patent office is giving you some time for you to commercialize your invention. That's the reason that initially 2 years there are no fees, and after that, once you start commercializing your invention, you're expected to make money, and since you're making money, they are expecting you to make more payments as the duration progresses, right? So it's basically not uniform fees for every year, but rather it keeps on varying. I hope I'm audible.
Sir, yes, sir.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Now, this is something that we also discussed in my previous session over here. That basically patents are a market monopoly tool. These are private rights given to individuals or to legal entities for protecting their invention from unauthorized use in the market commercially. It's basically an incentive or a reward. Primarily, why is it given? Because you're disclosing your invention to the public. So initially, once a patent is filed, you may be disclosing what that particular uh, patent covers. For example, if it covers a product, so you will say that this is the product that I was intending to patent, or for which I've got a patent. So you also disclose how that product is made and what are the characteristics of that product. Likewise, your patent can also be for a process. So if you're claiming a process, you'll be disclosing how what the uniqueness of that process is and how many steps is it carried out, and the product that is obtained by process, it may have some advantages. So if I'm talking in the context of chemistry, maybe you may have obtained an economical process of making a particular product, or you may have obtained a process which is improving the quality of the product. So such things is what we will be covering in the case of process patents. But disclosure is that you have to enable someone as a third person. If I as a third person is reading your patent document, I must be in a position to exactly make that invention in the same manner in which you have disclosed. And I must also obtain the same results that you have obtained over there. So in case I'm not able to obtain the results, even after repeatedly carrying out those experiments disclosed in the patent, I can always approach the patent office to get this patent revoked if it has been granted, or we can oppose it if it has not been granted by way of a pre-grant opposition. So those mechanisms will always be there. Those also are one of the requirements. Now moving on to my next slide on the rights that you have. So once a patent is granted, you may recall I mentioned that you will have certain rights. So whether it's a patented product or whether it's a product which is obtained by a patented process. So as an owner of a patent, you have certain rights. So you can exclude others from making, using, selling, offering for sale, or importing your patented invention without your permission. So any unauthorized use would be considered as violation of a patent right and can be considered as an infringement. So once if someone is carrying out any unauthorized activity which is violating your right, you can always approach the district court and seek an injunction. So injunction is preventing them from further carrying out the infringement activities if they are already doing that. So if someone is actually for a patented product, if someone without your permission, by permission I mean is a license, without a license is introducing an imitation of your product for which you have a patent. So in such cases, you can always approach the High Court and you can seek legal remedies, provided the patent has been granted. So if you only applied for a patent and it is yet to be granted, you don't have any legal remedies, but you can inform the alleged infringer that yes, I have filed a patent application, and once it is granted, I can always claim damages from the date of publication. So retrospectively, you can claim damages, but then you can only initiate legal action once the patent is granted. Right? I hope I'm clear with that. Now, on the left-hand side, you see I talk about the rights, and on the right-hand side, I talk about the exceptions. Exceptions are nothing but rights of a third party. So if I am a teacher and I want to use a patented invention for providing for the purpose of experimentation or for showing it to the teacher students in a lab, then such use of a patented invention is not going to be considered as an infringement. Or likewise, I want to develop a better invention using something that is already patented. So I identify a problem with a patented invention, and then I carry out further research on that. So such research which I am carrying out will not be considered as an infringement over there. Likewise, if I'm using it for experimentation purpose, or if the government is using a patented invention for certain purposes. For example, in this COVID situation, it is very relevant because if the government wants, there are certain patented medicines that are being sold. If the government wants, they can authorize someone to make these medicines, but they can't sell it in the market, but they can provide it to the needy people over there through the various hospitals and all. Likewise, they can also import medicines if we are not in a position to make or manufacture those medicines in India for which a patent is existing. So government can always step in for using your property because it's a private property over here. Just if I have to give you an analogy, it's just like if you have a property, if the government wants, they can acquire your property for the purpose of development over there, right? So if they want to build a road, or they want to build a railway track, or they want to build an overbridge, they can always acquire your property over there. So likewise, in the case of patents also, it's no different. They can use your invention, and they can also even acquire your invention. That means they can take over your property over there. So such things are also possible over there. Moving on to the third exception is this is particularly you see more in the case of agrochemicals and pharmaceuticals fulfilling regulatory requirements. So you may be aware that if you have to introduce a medicine, a new drug in the market, you have to carry out these clinical trials and show that it is safe and effective for use in humans. So if there is already a patent for a new medicine, and if a generic version of that medicine has to be introduced, they also need to follow certain regulatory requirements. So if you're purchasing an active pharmaceutical ingredient, so active pharmaceutical ingredient is basically the molecule which is responsible for the therapeutic action. For the purpose of us making these tablets and then submitting the information to the drug regulatory bodies. If you're purchasing that API and you're formulating it and you are also carrying out this biological action or bioavailability or bioequivalent studies, such activities will not be considered as violation because it is being done for the purpose of fulfilling certain regulatory requirements. Likewise, if there is a patented invention or if there is a patent for a product in India, and if you are importing that outside from outside, and if you're doing it legally, it will not be considered as a violation of the patent right, which is normally called as a parallel import. That means you're importing it from outside for which there is already a patent existing in India or maybe even a product, but then it is being sold cheaply outside. And if you do it legally, you don't smuggle it, then it will not be a violation of the patent rights. And finally, moving to compulsory license. Now, when we talk about compulsory license, it is interesting because if you people have been following these news or these cases in Supreme Court or Delhi High Court, you find that they have been raising this issue of invoking a compulsory license for these patented medicines. Because these medicines are costly, that is one of the grounds by which a generic company can approach the patent office, or even the government of India can invoke a compulsory license under a section 92 that we call, or seek a compulsory license under section 84 if the price is very high or if it is not available to the public. That means there are not sufficient quantities. So in the case of COVID, we have seen that both there is the price of these patented medicines are high. Likewise, their availability is also a question because you can't cater the only one or you'll find only one pharmaceutical company which may be having a patent for that medicine. And then if they are not giving voluntary license to other companies, they will be the only ones who will be making. And then there is going to be a scarcity because you will not be in a position to meet the demands of the patient population when you're talking the context of COVID. So there's been only one compulsory license that had been granted for medicines, for a patented medicine. It was an anti-cancer medicine. It was a patented medicine for treatment of kidney cancer by the name of sorafenib. So the drug was being sold for 2,80,000 for one course of treatment. As you're aware that the cost is very high, even a middle class man cannot afford that kind of a price. So the generic company had approached the patent office saying that they'd be selling the medicine, the patented medicine, a generic version of the patented medicine at a fraction of the price. In fact, they were offering to sell at 4% of that price, which was close to 8,800 for this one particular treatment regimen. So that's the kind of impact that patents can create. So likewise, compulsory, these mechanisms are in place to prevent abuse of these monopolies. So in that case, yes, the license was granted and then the medicine was being made available for 8,800 in the Indian market. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, ma'am, for confirming. So moving on to the next slide. This is something we have also discussed when we had on the session on overview of IPR. So higher returns is primarily because you have a monopoly. As I discussed just in my previous slide, the case of this anti-cancer medicine, because there was a patent, they were charging 2,80,000. So if there is no patent, it was being sold for 8,800 rupees, right? So even though there was a patent, so that's the difference or the premium that you can in some fields you can charge very high premiums because you have monopoly in that. But it may not be very prevalent in some highly competitive fields wherein there may be alternatives available. For example, other fields such as fields of technology, wherein you will always find different kinds of alternatives. Just look at the mobile phone market. So you see that there are a lot of mobile phones, and even if there is a patent for something, you may actually come up with a different technology for developing a mobile phone. It may not be true in the case of medicines over there. Right? And revenue generation, this we discussed. So I'm just quickly saying that these are the three modes by which you can generate revenue over there. So you can sell your property. That means you assign your rights to someone. So once you assign your rights, you no longer have any rights in that particular patent. Likewise, you can license it out. So you can it's equivalent to renting it out to people for certain terms and conditions. So could be for a certain period of time, could be for a certain region. Likewise, it can be exclusive license wherein even the patentee himself cannot actually practice his invention. So those are some of the types and conditions that you may have over there. Mortgaging, as I said, so in near future, you if you have a patent, you can approach a bank and then you can pledge your patent over there in return for investment for probably developing your invention for which you have got a patent. At valuation, we discussed, I gave you the example of IBM, how much revenue generates basically annually from licensing their patent portfolio. Likewise, it also had brand because the more number of patents, the more people recognize you as well over there. Even though it's no guarantee of a commercial success over there, any patent. So you may recall these are independent. So based on the study that I had discussed, that in fact only 95% of the patents that are granted, in fact only 5% of the patents, sorry, that are granted are being commercialized based on a US study. Now, what are the risks involved? So I'm just talking about. So I have to make you aware of not just the benefit but also the risk that is associated. For instance, if you file a patent application and if it has no commercial viability, it can become a liability over there, right? So because once a patent is granted, every year you have to pay the annuity fees. And if you're not commercializing it, that's what I said, that it can become a liability. So every year you pay renewal fees so that you can maintain the patent. But then if you don't commercialize it, it can become a liability. So that's one of the risks that is associated. If you draft a very narrow patent, that means if the claims are very specific, there is a likelihood that people can always work around your patent. So they can come up with alternatives of your patent. So specifically, if you have developed some product, let's assume, and you have been very specific in naming the components of that product, but then another company can use alternatives of these components and achieve the same objective over there. So in such situations, what happens is your patent may not be in a position to prevent others from coming up with a workaround strategy over there. So patent drafting is also very key on how you draft your patents, how narrow it is or how broad it is. The claims that you're putting across in the patent is also very important or crucial. The risk, one of the risk also, as I said, weak patents. By weak patents, what I mean is which may not qualify as a patent in the first place, but then based on ignorance or based on some other things, you may have filed a patent application. So what happens in such cases? The patent will not be granted and your information also falls in the public domain. So anybody can actually start using that. So that's the risk that is also associated when you're trying to file patent application for inventions which may not be patentable because they may not be meeting the patentability requirements over there. Now, apart from that, there's one more thing that is can be discussed, that is subject matter. So, if you recall, I did say that there are certain limitations with regards to what can be patented. So not every subject matter can be patented. So something has to qualify as an invention. For example, there are certain excluded subject matters. So if you have discovered a plant or an animal, even if it's new, it is not considered to be a patentable subject matter because it is considered to be a product of nature. It is already there in the nature and it is considered to be exclusive to none because you say that patents give you an exclusive right. So discovery are not patentable subject matter because it is already there. There is no human ingenuity that is been involved over there. But in cases, for example, even microorganisms are not patentable subject matter. If you have discovered it, if you have created a microorganism in the lab using these tools of genetic engineering, it may still be patentable subject matter. So you have to be critical on choosing whether you can file a patent application. One of the interesting questions that you find is, can I actually patent the music? So basically, music is not a patentable subject matter. It is not considered to involve an inventive faculty over there. although it does involve creativity, and that's why it is protected under copyright rather than rather than patent. So even excluded subject matter includes these literary, dramatic, musical, artistic, all those works. So we have a list on that. We'll discuss what those list is in when we discuss about what is considered as non-patentable in India. I hope I'm audible.
Sir, you're audible, sir.
So now we come to this particular slide on patentability requirement. So if you recall, when I was just introducing this particular concept over there, I was clearly mentioning that patents are not automatically granted. So there is a certain procedure that is followed by the patent office. They will evaluate whether your invention, which you claim to be a patent, is in fact patentable or not. So there's an examination process that is carried out. And these examination processes are based on certain criteria. So let us quickly look at what those criteria are basically. Yeah, so this was something that I did discuss even in my previous slide, that there are certain subject matter which are excluded from patentability, so which are not considered as inventions. So if your subject matter falls in that particular category, as I discussed in my previous slide, that if it's a discovery, it is not considered to be patentable. Whether it's a living thing or a non-living substance, it's not considered to be a patentable subject matter, even if it meets other requirements. So basically, there are 4 requirements that are major. Most of these countries have, but I'm talking specifically with regards to India. So the first and foremost is that these should not fall in this particular category. So it's just like how if uh, uh, if someone has to apply for the MBBS entrance or the BTech entrance, so you know that the basic requirement over there is that in +2 you must have a science or a technology background over there. So people from other backgrounds are excluded, right? So if you have arts or commerce in your +2, then you know that you are excluded from even appearing for that examination. So that's what we mean by exclusions. So something that for which you cannot you cannot give protection or cannot be even considered uh, for for patentability over there. Now, quickly looking at novelty, this novelty is different from what we discussed in our previous sessions on the commercial novelty in the context of in the context of protection of plant varieties and farmers' rights, or even in the context of what you would say industrial design. Over here, what novelty means is that it must be new. That is, it must not have been disclosed anywhere in the world before the filing of a patent application. So if today you have filed a patent application, your invention must not be present in a single document entirely. So basically, how do you identify? So for instance, if I have developed a wireless mouse, and if there is already a disclosure before I file a patent application anywhere in the world, in a single document, that means a patent document or a scientific literature discloses this wireless mouse using that particular technology, then my invention will not be novel. So anywhere in the world, or there is no publication, let's assume for a moment, that means there is no patent filed or there is no disclosure, but this product was already there available in the market. So there's companies which were selling it. So once, or even you were in fact selling it before filing a patent application. So once you develop this invention, you probably did not know whether I need to file a patent application or not. And you started selling this product in the market and you realize it's been a huge success, and someone advises you to file a patent application, and then you decide to file a patent application. So when the patent office is examining your application, they look at whether this particular use, that means whether the product was already there in the market or there in the public domain before the filing of a patent application. If it comes after the filing of a patent application, it is not going to have an impact. So once you file a patent application and then you introduce this product in the market, it will not have an impact on the novelty. But even before that, if you're doing that, it can definitely have an impact on the novelty. So when we evaluate novelty, we are looking at whether this thing is entirely disclosed in a single document or whether this is entirely present in the public domain as a product before the filing of the patent application. So even if you are doing that, well, there are certain exceptions to that. For example, if you have presented a paper in a conference and if you have filed your patent application within 1 year of presenting the paper, then in India, it will not be considered as a prior art or it will not have an impact on the novelty. Likewise, if you are displaying your invention in an exhibition and within 1 year of the display, such display, you file a patent application, then it will not be considered as a no, it will not impact your novelty and the invention may still be novel, right? So those are some of the exceptions, but others, if you start selling it in the market before filing, that's completely barred and that will have, if you do that, your invention will not be novel. If it is not novel, it will not be patentable. So your invention has to in fact meet all these requirements. Only then would a patent be granted by the patent office. So it's just like if someone is trying to enroll for a particular course. So before taking admission, you people know that you have to check the marks, you have to check all his requirements of regarding age and all those things. So unless he meets all those requirements, only then can you provisionally admit him for that particular course or enroll him for that particular course. So likewise, in the patents, it is no different. So unless all the requirements are met, only then a patent is granted. So if you fail to meet even just one requirement, a patent will not be granted. And even oral knowledge, in the case of India, you find that something that's traditional knowledge, even whether it's not being used in public domain or whether it is not present in any literature. So traditional knowledge that is there enclosed within a particular community may not be available in the document. That may be orally transmitted from one generation to another generation. Even such disclosures can have an impact on if someone is trying to patent traditional knowledge. So even oral knowledge is covered in novelty. Just a moment. I just need to. Okay. Now, moving on to the third requirement of inventive step or non-obviousness. So we say that it has to be non-obvious. It has to be non-obvious to a person skilled in the art. So person skilled in the art is basically, if I'm talking about this wireless mouse, a person skilled in the art would be a software engineer or a hardware engineer who knows about this technology. So that's what. So when you're looking at inventive step, you assume that your invention is novel. So for example, if I'm talking about wireless mouse, if I have developed wireless mouse and my invention is novel, that means wireless mouse is not disclosed in any literature entirely, or whether it's patent or any scientific document or your own disclosure, or that product is also not there in the market. So in such situations, my invention would be novel, right? Now, when we talk about inventive step, we look at whether what is the closest relevant reference of product that is available in the market. So in the context of a wireless mouse, if it is novel, the closest relevant reference would be a wired mouse, right? So if I have to ask you, because you have developed this wireless mouse using a wired mouse, so that's when you may have this idea of coming up with wireless mouse. So you compare with the wired mouse, and then you know the difference between the wired mouse and the wireless mouse is this particular technology, this wireless technology that differentiates. So when you evaluate inventive step, there you are looking at is whether this difference, that means this particular wireless technology, whether it would have been obvious for a computer or software or a hardware engineer to think of this technology which was already existing. So let's assume this wireless technology was existing in keyboards. So there was wireless keyboards and there were wired mouse. So you looked at the wireless wired mouse and the wireless keyboard, and you adopted this particular technology present in the wireless keyboard into the mouse and converted into a wireless mouse. So if that was the case, there are two possibilities. One, it is a cakewalk. That means it's just, we call it as a mere workshop improvement. So it was very easy for you to make this change or to incorporate this technology into a mouse. Then it will be obvious to a person skilled in the art. If it is obvious to a person skilled in the art, the invention lacks inventive step. However, if it was very difficult or it was very complicated when you are trying to adopt this technology, you had to make changes to the mouse. So you have to make changes to the mouse structure of the mouse, or maybe make some hardware changes so that you could incorporate this wireless technology into mouse. So in such situations, it will not be obvious to a person skilled in the art, and then the invention would have inventive step. Finally, when we talk about capable of industrial applications, so these barring copyrights, all these intellectual property rights are considered to be industrial rights because these emanated in the context of industries on how the intellectual property that's being generated by these industries, how it can be protected. So if you look historically. So when we talk about capability of industrial application, it means that the invention that you have developed must be either capable of being made or being used in an industry. So, for example, there can be certain subject matter which cannot be considered as an industrial application. For example, if you have an invention on method of treating a particular individual, so that is not considered to be capable of industrial application. So, because treating a patient is normally not considered to be industrial in nature. So, such things you can exclude from the industrial application. Otherwise, most of these patents normally have these industrial application. In fact, in these four criteria that I have discussed over here, the most difficult hurdle to cross through is in fact the inventive step hurdle. So most of the patents are refused for lacking inventive step in their patent application. Right. So inventive step is always assessed with regards to more than two or more to two or more literatures, right, or two or more products. So you must have whenever you are analyzing inventive step, that is how it is analyzed. But when you are analyzing novelty, you are only looking at a single document. So whether in a single document your invention is disclosed entirely, or if it is available in the market or the public is using it, was it present entirely in the domain. So that's how we evaluate novelty and inventive. I hope it is clear to all of you. Well, in India, it is covered under the section 3 and 4 of the Patent Act 1970. Now, quickly moving on to the non-patentable subject matter that I did mention over here. In India, perpetual motion. So if you have come up with a machine which you say works 24/7, unless you can show it working, a patent will not be granted. Or you say you have devised, you have designed a machine which is 100% efficient. So unless you show that it's practically or theoretically that may be possible, practically since it is not possible, unless you show that it constantly or progressively is 100% efficient, not just for a matter of seconds or maybe matter of minutes that it is efficient, but then it has to be a sustainable efficiency over there. Discovery, as I said before, of whether a living or a non-living thing is not a patentable subject matter. A discovery of a new form of a known substance. So this is particularly in the context of pharmaceuticals. So if you have come up with a new salt or maybe a new polymorph of a known substance, unless a new polymorph or new salt shows enhanced efficacy in the context of medicines, it is therapeutic efficacy over the existing substance, a patent will not be granted. It will be considered as the same substance. It will not be considered as an invention. Mathematical or business methods, these are in fact considered as abstract and not considered patentable. Algorithms also are considered abstract. These are sequence or series of steps, more used in mathematics or software programs. Method of agriculture or horticulture is also not patentable in India. Methods of medical treatment or diagnosis, even methods of diagnosis are not patentable, and related procedure for humans or animals. Computer programs per se. So if you have a software program, you have written down a software program, could be the object code or source code. Such codes are not patentable in India. But you can definitely get a patent for the functional aspect of that computer program. So for instance, these days you find that there are robotic surgeons available to assist, or you can say that robots are assisting surgery over there these days. So that particular aspect of assistance or maybe the robot as such can be patented, uh, but not the software program that you may have written down for the robot to be functioning or to make certain to perform certain actions may not be patentable over there. Plants and animals other than microorganisms. So what it means is plants and animals are not patentable, but microorganism, subject to whether it's a discovery or an invention, it may still be patentable. So if you have discovered a microorganism which is already occurring in nature, that is not patentable, even though it may be a new species. But then you have created that microorganism in the lab from an existing microorganism. That new microorganism or genetically modified microorganism may still be patentable. I think I also have solutions for this. So basically, these are the problems that you have with regards to patentable subject matter. But there are also solutions. So this is basically a huge list. So if you want to refer to that list, this is not exhaustive. You can look at section 3 and 4 of the patent act. So there are 16 uh, under 16 heads. These various subject matters are covered, but overall there are more than 16. Possible way of avoiding exclusions. You can come up with a genetically engineered microorganism. As I said, microorganisms per se are not patentable, but then if you have invented a microorganism, it may still be patentable. Culture media for tissue culture may be patentable subject matter. Culture apparatus for tissue culture may be patentable. So you may recall that methods of diagnosis are not patentable in India, but diagnostic kit composition. So for example, if you have come up with a COVID-19 testing kit, that would be patentable, but not how it is used for diagnosing COVID-19, that would not be a patentable subject matter. So if someone is using that kit for diagnosing COVID-19, that method cannot be patented, but the diagnostic kit, that means the composition of the particular diagnostic kit, may be still patentable as a product. So products may still be patented, but processes will not be allowed patents. Medical devices, likewise, as I said, methods of treatment are not patentable, but devices or products over there, such as medical devices, it may still be patentable. Or novel dairy and horticulture products may be patentable. So methods of horticulture are not patentable, but dairy. So if you have come up with a processed food based dairy product, processed dairy product, such products may still be patentable. Plants are not patentable, but plant-based agrochemicals, so the purification, testing, and various things are patentable. Methods of agriculture are not patentable, but agricultural machinery, implements, and laboratory equipment may still be patentable. But please understand that this can only be patented when it also meets the other requirements of patentability. So that's what I said. If you recall in my slide on the criteria of patentability, there are 4 requirements. Unless those 4 requirements, apart from that, there are also other requirements which are more formal in nature, but the ones that I discussed are more substantive in nature, and those are should be there in your invention. So that's what basically it means. Right. So just because you have an agriculture machinery, it does not mean that it will get a patent. But then whether it is new and it involves inventive step, and whether it can be made in an industry is also critical when you're looking at the overall picture with regards to the invention. I hope I'm audible. I'm there with all of you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So quickly moving on to the patentability exercise that I was talking about. So basically, I have an invention one. Now you see that my invention is novel. It also possesses an inventive step. It also has industrial application, and it is not an excluded subject matter. So that means it's not a discovery or maybe the things that we normally talk under Section 3 in the Indian Act. So in such situations, my invention would be patentable. Now looking at the second invention, barring inventive step, my invention has got all other requirements. So that means the novel industrial application, and it's not also an exclusion. So, but still, I don't get a patent because my invention is lacking inventive step. Likewise, in the third invention, you see barring industrial application, all other requirements are met. Still, my invention is not patentable. Invention 4, barring the excluded subject matter, everything else my invention possesses. In such situations also, it's not a patentable subject matter. So what it means is, in a nutshell, that your invention must fulfill all the requirements. Only then can a patent be awarded to your invention. Now, quickly moving on to the patent filing procedure in India. So you may recall, so you have an invention, so you have developed an invention one. So if your invention is complete in the sense that there is a proof of your concept or your product is ready to be introduced in the market, in such situations you would prefer option one, that is you file a patent application with complete specification. It's also called as a complete application. But let's assume your invention is incomplete and you require more time to develop it, or it's just a concept and you still require time to develop your concept. So in such situations, you may be filing option two. You file a provisional specification. So once you file a provisional specification, you have 12 months to file a complete. So if you look at the key difference between one and two is that in one you file an application only once. In the case of two, you have to file two applications and within a span of 12 months. So within 12 months, you have to file the complete specification. If you don't do that, your invention would not be considered by the patent office. It will be considered as abandoned. So there ends the story for your invention. Right. So this is something that is unique to patent office. So normally you don't find such mechanisms existing if you go for a scientific publication, isn't it? If you have to get your work published in a peer-reviewed or high impact factor journals, you always require that you need to have everything in hand, every information in place before filing. Now you file. Now once you choose option one or you choose option two, after you file your complete specification, you have to place a request for examination. So it's just like if a student is enrolled for a particular course in your institute or in your university, you know that before the student sits for the examination, end semester examination, you have to pay the examination fees. So it's no different over here. Since the patent application is examined by the patent office, so there are certain fees that have to be paid, and these fees has to be paid with a deadline, isn't it? Even for the examination fees that the students pay, there is a deadline that they have to pay within this deadline. So likewise, even in the case of paying the fees or filing a request for examination, there are certain timelines. It has to be done within 48 months or 4 years from the date of filing your application. So whether it is the provisional application or in option 2 or complete specification in option 1. Unless you file a request for examination, the patent office will not examine your application. So and if you don't do that within 4 years, your application would actually lapse. Now, once the complete specification is filed, it is published. So this is normally called as a pre-grant publication, and it happens 18 months after the first filed application. So for 18 months, the information remains confidential within the patent office, and then it is published after that. However, you can also seek early publication over there by paying fees. So normal publication is automatic. You're not required to pay any fees. But then if you want to seek early publication, which normally can be done within 1 month. So once you place a request, it gets published within 1 month of placing the request. So the benefit of going for early publication is that you can actually claim damages from the date when the application was published. And then you file, there is something called as a pre-grant opposition. So this is, as I said, a pre-grant publication. So if you look at the system, basically this application gets published twice during its lifetime. One is based on what the applicant is claiming, and the second is what the patent office considers to be a valid claim. So your claims may be broad while you're filing the application, but based on the examination of the patent office, you may have to narrow down your claims over there, or subject matter could be much narrower than what you have claimed over there. Now, pre-grant opposition, any person can file, as I said before. So if someone wants to oppose your invention, or a third party, your competitor believes that your invention should not be given a patent, he can go for a pre-grant opposition. He can file a pre-grant opposition. So there are certain grounds, such as we talked about the 4 grounds, saying that the invention is either not novel, or it lacks inventive step, or it is incapable of being manufactured in industry, or likewise it falls in the non-patentable subject matter domain. So there are other grounds as well, but these are the key grounds over there that you can use for filing a pre-grant opposition. So if a pre-grant opposition has not been successful, the application is examined, or no pre-grant opposition has also been filed, it goes to examination. So in most of the cases, you normally don't find a pre-grant opposition being filed. So on highly competitive fields, you may find that pre-grant oppositions may be filed your competitors. So that also proves that yes, your patent may have some value over there. Now, if everything is in order, uh, the patent is granted. So that's what I said. Now it gets published for the second time, and if once the patent is granted, it can still be opposed over there, but then there is a timeline for this. The post-grant opposition must be filed within 1 year of the date of grant of the patent, and not every person can do that. Only an interested person. So interested person could be the competitor who is working in that area. So those are the limitations. And once a patent is granted, every year then you have to start paying the renewal or annuity. Only fees are not there for the first 2 years. Well, this is the statutory fees that is normally associated with filing in India. The statutory fees is what I mean is the patent office fees. So there are 2 modes of filing, e-filing and physical filing, or the offline mode. And there are 2 categories of applicants. So if you are a college or a university, you would fall in the category of others. But if the applicant is a national person, that means an individual, or maybe a startup company or a small entity, in such cases will fall in the first category. And fees are, as you can see, 1,600 for an application and 4,000 for request for examination. In the case of others, the fees are 5 times higher. And likewise, in the case of physical filing, you find that the fees are 10% higher than the online filing or the e-filing. So that's primarily to discourage physical filing, and also they have to stockpile all these documents. That's also one of the reasons. And then this fees does not include the professional fees that I was talking about. So professional fees can be anywhere from 50,000 to 1.5 lakhs for the whole process from filing till grant. And also I've not covered the renewal or annuity fees. And this is the minimum fees basically when you're talking about application. So for up to 30 pages and 10 claims, you need to pay either 1600 or 8000 depending on the category under which the applicant falls. Uh, After 30 pages, the cost would go high. That means for each additional page after 30 or for each additional claim after 10, you have to pay additional fees. Now, quickly moving on to the patent filing in foreign countries. Now you want to protect your invention. You have filed a patent in India. Now you also want to protect that invention in other countries. So I mentioned that just because you file a patent application in India, you cannot get an international patent. So what you have to do is if you want to get a patent protection in other countries, you can choose one of these two options. The first option you have, this is called as the Paris Convention route. So wherein all those countries which are part of the Paris Convention, they actually respect the priority. So they give you a 12-month deadline, so within which you can file the application. After filing it in the home country, you can file the same application in other countries, but then it has to be done within 12 months. So that's what we call it as the Paris Convention. For instance, if you want to, you have filed an application in India, a patent application, and you want to also protect that same invention in US and Europe. So within 1 year, you will have to file an application in the US, and you'll also have to file an application in the European Union. So that's how you file two applications in addition to the one you filed in India. And if you're doing it within 1 year, since Europe and the US as well as India are members of the Paris Convention, this would the filing date in India would be considered as a filing date in those countries. So that's a benefit that you have over there. The effective filing date remains the same. So your own invention will get a grace period of 12 months. Now the second option is if you want to file in many countries, so either within 12 months you will have to file those many applications in all those countries, or you can choose what is called as an international application or a PCT route, right? By choosing an international application or a PCT route, what happens is you just file one application. So PCT currently has 152 member countries, or rather 153 member countries. So it is equivalent to filing 153 applications. But please remember that it is not a grant mechanism, it is only a filing mechanism. So what it does is it gives you additional 18 or 19 months. So once you file a PCT, you have to file these national phase applications. So PCT is the international application. So once 18 or 19 months expire after the filing of an PCT, that means within 18 or 19 months, you have to file in those countries where you want to protect your invention. So initially it is filed in 152 countries, but then after 18 or 19 months, you choose not to file in all those countries. So you choose only 10 countries or you choose only 20 countries. So then you have to file 20 applications within 18 or 19 months. So the benefit of PCT is that you file just one application in one language. There are 10 languages that are recognized by the PCT. So in any of those languages, you have to file. Otherwise, what happens is if you want to file in these Asian countries, you will have to translate your document from English into those native languages and then file these applications. The cost could also be high over there, right? So option 2 is just a transient mechanism. It does not grant you a patent. It just is a filing mechanism which searches for your invention and provides an opinion whether your invention would be patentable with regards to only novelty, inventive step, and industrial application. So those are the three things that are evaluated. Does not look at a non-patentable subject matter. So once you file, it's the same process. It gets published, then it has to be examined, and then if it meets the requirements, grant. So this I've just given a general outline. There could be differences because we have seen in India that after publication there is pre-grant opposition. So that may not be there in other countries. So this is generally the common steps that you may find while you're trying to file your application in or foreign countries in protecting it over there. So quickly moving on to do's and don'ts, basically carry out a perform patentability search because you don't want to reinvent the wheel. So you spend your time and resources in developing an invention that you believe is novel, but after carrying out a search, you realize that it was there in China or maybe in some other country, then what happens is all your time, money, and resources have been wasted, and you end up not getting a patent. So it is always advisable to carry out a search of your invention. It's just like when you're doing a research or prior to starting your research for a PhD, you will always look at the literature or you'll carry out a literature survey. So likewise, even in the case of patents, you must follow that, right? And disclose all the prior patent and non-patent literature relevant to your invention in the background. So you normally pitch the issues that are associated with this already existing documents or products, and then you say that your product or your invention is basically a solution to that particular problem. Enablement, as I discussed, that this is one of the key requirements that any person who looks at your specification must be in a position to actually work the invention over there. Fourth point is not very essential. Normally, it has to be followed in the case of industries or even in if a research scholar is probably because it takes time for the patent to be granted. Oh, I forgot to mention about the timelines when we discussed about the patent filing. So, it can take anywhere from 8 months to maybe 5 years or 6 years for a patent to be granted after it is filed. So, if you are going for early publication or if you're going for expedited examination, patents can be granted in less than a year. But if you follow the normal procedure and but you timely do all those things like file the request for examination and all those things, you can get it in less than 3 years. In fact, we got one patent in 27 months and the other one in we got it in I think 32 months. So in less than 3 years, we got all these patents over there. So even by following the normal procedure, but by timely filing the request for examination and following the procedures, you may still get a patent these days in less than 3 years. But then it also depends on the field of technology. In some fields of technology, it takes more time for the application to be examined. So it could be the load of patent applications may be higher, but then on an average, it can take anywhere from 3 to 6 years. Now, expecting that if you follow the timelines, but there have been patents which have taken 10 years or more to be granted as well. So, as I discussed, please refrain from doing all these activities such as publishing your invention, that means going for a journal publication or even in a conference, because in the case of India, you may still have a grace period of 1 year. But then if you want to file your application or the invention or your patent in other countries, they may not recognize this as they may recognize this as a relevant document, your own disclosure in a conference, and then that can go against your invention over there. So these activities strictly refrain from doing before you file your application. Once you file your application, you can go for these things or these activities, and it will not have an impact. Right? So don't commercialize it, don't showcase it, don't disclose it. Now, this is something that I was talking about. So you have to enter into a non-disclosure or a confidentiality agreement prior to disclosing your invention if you are involved in a collaborative research or if you're disclosing it to somebody. So for funding, you'll find that some companies or some individuals may be pitching for funding, and then they may have to disclose it to seek funding. So in such situations, advisable to have a non-disclosure agreement. But if you are a startup company, I think it may not be easy because you may be approaching this funding through the startup missions or through these incubators. So in such situations, you have to be careful. And once you have agreed on the ownership of IPR prior to commencement of a project, then before commercialization, have also an agreement for sharing the benefits. So if someone is commercializing, what is the benefit that you get as a co-owner? Right. So quickly winding up. Right. So carry out these activities. You carry out a patent and non-patent literature search. So journal search, avoid publication, any format, avoid commercial marketing, avoid display. So if you have to test your products, we have something called as an reasonable trial exception. If you have to test your product in the public, and if you file your application within 1 year of doing such disclosure, it may still not be anticipated by your own disclosure over there. So yes, but apart commercial marketing is you have put your product in the market, you're selling it for the purpose of the commercial sales. So in such situations, it can impact the novelty of your invention. And if it is not novel, it will not be patentable. Now, in certain situations, it may be very urgent for you to actually, go for these activities, the 4 bullet points that I've mentioned. So if that is very urgent, go for filing a provisional application. So before disclosing it. So that's what you can do. If not, file a complete application. This is something that we have done. I think I discussed this in my previous class. Yeah, so thank you all for your attention, and then I'm open for questions. In case you have any questions on IPR, you can call me. This is also my WhatsApp number, or you can email me on this particular ID. Website is currently down. So with that, I end my presentation, and I'm open for questions. So let me just stop sharing my screen for a moment.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. Now the session is open for discussion. Either you can unmute yourself and have the queries, or you can put up your questions in the chat box. Also, the feedback form is available in the chat.
Okay. Okay, fine.
Hope the session was very clear and there are no queries regarding the sessions. Is there
Or
anything
it could
to
be
be
other way
clarified?
around. Right? It could also be the other way around, right? Both possibilities. Anyway, thank you all for listening to me, and I think there was some issues with regards to. I did see the chat messages now. So probably could also have been my audio that may have caused issues, I believe. Yes, okay, I believe there are no further questions, so you can take over from here, ma'am.
Okay, sir, I think we can conclude. Now let me call upon Dr. Amna for proposing the vote of thanks. Amina Hussain, are you there in the meeting? Okay, I think she left the meeting. So, sir, on behalf of the IQAC St. Xavier's College for Women and also Stride MG University, and on behalf of all the participants present over here, we are so grateful for you for these 2 sessions on IPR. And I extend my wholehearted gratitude to you for the same. Again, I'm seeing Amina over here, and Amina has something to say for you. Amina ma'am.
Yes. First of all, I'm Dr. Amina Hussain, and I am assistant professor at the Department English and Modern European and Asian Languages. Language University. This is in Lucknow, Uttar Pradesh. And I must say that this FDP has been of immense value to all of us, all participants. And I'm extremely to propose a special vote of thanks to Dr. I.G. Ratish, Assistant Professor at the Inter-University Center of IPR Studies, famed Cochin University of Science and Technology. Sir, you have, in your first presentation, you discussed the tools of IPR in the Indian context. It is very insightful. You simplified the examples in your second presentation, patent filing, and I would participants for this. And I also would like to take this opportunity to interact with all of you directly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks for
Thank
the
you,
wonderful
Amina.
work.
Thank you so much. So we are winding up this session.